This has been wonderful, and we are excited about how the conversation will continue after today. The wonderful thing about this Influence Her event is that it's not your typical women's conference-y, churchy, leadership-y thing, right? This really can turn into how we build and restore community with each other, right? There are some folks in here hiring, and there are some folks in here looking for a job. There are some folks in here who need services, and there are some folks in here with services to offer. And so we want to build community here. We want you to talk beyond today. And I'm just going to put in a plug for something else. There's a Facebook group. How many of you know about the Facebook group? Okay, so we want you to engage in the Facebook group because, number one, that will help you to know what's happening next, and it will keep you in the conversation, okay? So I'm gonna do a better job. I'm gonna hop in there. I'm gonna hop in there with these ladies. I'm gonna throw a question out for them, let them answer it, and we want your feedback because we don't wanna wait until next year to see each other. We don't want to do that, okay? So let's work through how do we keep community going after this event is over, okay? All right, so I have questions. And I'm going to start with Miss Lori. Is everybody's mic on? Say hello.
Hello.
All right, her mic is on. All right, so Miss Lori, the question for you is how were you able to find community while raising your family and climbing the ladder? You told a really, really powerful but painful story about how opportunities for community were snatched even, and those opportunities dissolved. But how were you able to figure out how to maintain connection, how to build community for yourself in the space that you were in?
I wish I could say that I found that entirely. I really didn't find it perfectly in one place. So especially when I moved to Richmond, but even in Charlottesville, I found women architects that were not necessarily Christians that I could talk with about my career. And at church, I had small groups and good friends. They did not overlap. I wish they did. And so that's one of the reasons that it really, I think, has struck me that I want to be different. I want to be a friend to women of faith that have careers. I want to, help mentor them, but just be an encourager to them. And so I think that the fact that I really didn't have that perfectly has made me want to not have somebody else go through what I went through.
Exactly. I see a question on the screen, so I'm going to jump over here. And this one is for anyone who wants to answer. Hopefully, two of you will answer in 2 minutes or less. But for the panel, it says, career movement-wise, what is it you see God putting you up to in your vocation? What do you see as next, maybe, for you? Anybody want to jump on that one? Because I think you all are kind of in some pretty good seats right now, vocationally.
I would just say that I feel like I am in a space or a season where someone wrote, it was very sweet on Twitter, in our community, there are people I consider helpers. And she tagged me in it. And I was so grateful for that because I decided to pursue journalism to be a helper. And my very specific role is literally to have people come with their issues and their problems, and our job is to help them. Yeah. So more than anything, who knows what's next? And that's kind of the beautiful part. But what I do know is that there is a calling through my work and through my journalism to be a helper, because that's what God has called us to do.
So you don't have any plans on being the next Oprah or anything like that?
If it's God's will, you know.
It's God's will. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. I will speak very quickly to the slides and the books that were referenced. Everybody up here is an avid reader. And so we're going to do our best to collect a book list and to get that out. And here you go. Here's another way to create community. Maybe we pick a book each month and we read it and we talk about it in the group and we ask questions and all of that stuff. And please, any opportunity to buy a book, sign me up. Because I'm a little ridiculous with it if anybody's been to my house. So that's another opportunity, but we will make sure that that information gets out to all of you, okay? So I'm going to skip over to Salathia, the disruptor.
Yes.
So as a disruptor, as I know you to be, you're a nice one though. They're nice about it. If there's a woman in here and she's like, I'm a disruptor, I know I'm a disruptor, but I don't feel anchored, what would you say to her? She's kind of disrupting over here and disrupting over there and falling 10 steps back and disrupting back there. How could she anchor herself so that she could focus?
I think that it has been reiterated a couple of times. It's about getting still, getting before God, getting quiet. We do a lot of talking. And, you know, I hear people say, God doesn't talk that much, but he's speaking all the time. And we just don't slow down enough to really take in what he's saying and how he's saying it. And so it requires sacrifice. It requires no as a complete sentence without a period, right? And just being able to get still and get centered before him and being able to distinguish his voice from the voices of all the other people around. And then asking him, just simply asking him. He says, ask. Right? Seek, knock, and the door will be open to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Powerful, powerful, powerful. Okay. Let's see who I want to go to next. Miss Rachel. So you talked about, and I can totally relate. My youngest did the same thing. We took her to college. And she said, okay, I wanted to come here. I have no idea why I'm here. I have no idea what I want to study. I don't know. And we sat there with the books and we sat there on our phones like, okay, do you like this? Does this sound right? Do you think this aligns with your gifts? And she just was like, I know I'm supposed to be here and that's enough for me right now. So talk to us about how now looking back, how not knowing the plan has benefited you. Because we think we have to know. We think we need, you know, I tell people all the time, you know, Noah spoiled us because when God told him to build this ark, he gave him instructions cubit by cubit on how to do it, right? And then God tells us to do something and we're waiting for that download and there's nothing. Not even the next step sometimes, right? So now that you've had this time and you can look back on your college self who didn't know, who wasn't clear, how has that benefited you going forward?
I think that's a great question. And I mean, I think it has benefited me in so many ways. And I feel like I'm in a place of I just give up, you know, but in a good way. Like I'm going to stop trying. I'm going to stop trying to figure it out. I'm going to stop trying to, I still dream, but I'm not going to try to come up with what I'm supposed to be doing. You know, I look back on everything. I mean, I only got married a year ago. That took way longer than I thought it was going to take. So there's
Sometimes
so
it's
many-
worth the wait. 'Cause some of us rushing
Yeah,
through it a little too
exactly.
quick.
100% is. And so I would want to tell myself back then, it's okay, and just rest and know. And it took me a while, I think, to learn that. But I wouldn't write a different story because the story that I have is not one that I ever would have thought of. And so I'm thankful for it.
I think sometimes we think the be still and know means know the plan. And really what it just means is know who knows the plan.
Yeah, that's
To
good.
just know who knows the plan. Okay, Miss Jasmine. What would you say has been the biggest gift you found in the silence?
Wow. The biggest gift in the silence is that kind of what Salethia was saying. I don't need all the fanfare to feel whole. I don't need the awards. I don't need the clapping. I don't need a whole bunch of, you're great, you're this, you're that. Because God already knows me. And so I think just it's the gift of that one-on-one is so powerful because, right, we're used to corporate worship, we're used to being in groups, but just sitting and it's just me and my homie, what? It's beautiful because it's just hard to get those moments throughout life. So I don't know, I think that's the biggest gift.
So what I hear you saying is the gift is him.
Yeah, the gift is
The
God.
gift is him. The
Yeah.
gift is him. So I see someone who popped in and said, being still and listening can be intimidating because we want a quick answer. How do you all deal with the initial quietness while waiting for God to speak? Shameless plug, I wrote a whole book about it. I promise you, I wrote a whole book about that very question, and it's called 15 Minutes of Grace. And I'm going to pass this to the panel, but one of the things that I will say about that is what Jasmine just tapped into. You're not waiting for him. He's waiting for you.
Yep.
You're not waiting for God to show up in the silence. He's waiting for you to quiet down. And sometimes it is audible, and sometimes it is in his word, and sometimes it is through the worship. But sometimes what you need is the comforter. And that's more important than the answer. That's more important than the conversation. It's just the reminder of knowing that you are with the comforter. You are with the one all-wise knowing God, and that he's so in love with you that he counts the hairs on your head.
Yes.
My God.
So surely he knows what to do about the husband and the boss and the crazy employees and the bills and he knows, right? He's so intimately connected to you. And yet we let the God of busy, we bow at the God of busy instead of taking that time. You can't make time, but you can take time. And so hopefully what you've heard as a thread from all of these women is that them doing that is how they got here. It wasn't because they always knew, but it was because they knew who to go to. And that there's peace and there's grace and there is sustainability in knowing that no, you don't have a question that's too big. You don't have a situation that's too large. God is aware. He's not caught by surprise. And that he wants to. I think that's one of the biggest things. If we could just get it in our head that God wants to bless. He wants to answer. It's his good pleasure to
Yes.
be good to us. And we disqualify ourselves with our lives and our decisions and our choices that didn't quite work out. And we tell ourselves that we're not worthy and that we've done something that's hindering that answer, that connection from being as powerful as it's meant to be. And it's simply not true. It's simply not true. Does anybody else have something that they want to add to that?
Just very quickly, we were talking about our husband's personality types, right? And I said, I can't quite remember which one my husband falls in, but he's like, it's got to come together. There's a plan. Was it 6
Yeah.
that we said? It's got to be a plan. Mom is probably over there nodding her head. Her son in love just knows, right? I got to have it all planned out. And we were just waiting for some things to fall into place. And I could see, he's just stressing for days and days and days. I don't even remember what it was, but I do remember this moment, which answers the how do you deal with the initial quietness. He's sitting there, and then an email pops up, and he says, "Oh, it's come together." And I think I was going to the store or something, and I turned around and I said, "He may not come when you want him, but he'll be there right on time." And he was like, "Here she goes." I said, "He's an on-time God. Yes, he is. I'll see you later, honey. Bye." And I shut the door. So in the quiet, you remember that he's on time, right? In those intimidating moments, he is not going to come when you sit down. "Okay, I'm before you. Where's the answer? Where's the answer? Where's the answer?" It's not some burning bush stroke of genius, light bulb right then. But when it's time, you'll know.
That's good.
Yeah, give it up for that. Give it up to that. Anybody else? Anybody else? Because I think this also speaks to our questions around our identity and our value and our purpose. And we need those reminders. And if we don't make time and make space, right, so that we can be reminded, what are some of the ways, Rachel, that God just shows up for you in that way and reminds you, no, you're mine, you're my daughter?
Well, it actually is very similar to Jasmine. I have a playlist called Be Still My Soul. And it's music. And no matter what's going on in my life, it's the music that I often feel like I don't have the words. And the music speaks my prayers, but then repeats God's truth back to me. And so I find that that's a big way for me.
Mr. Lathier?
The book that I referenced, Come Away, My Beloved. How many of you have heard of that book
wanna read
other
it.
than today? And so if you read it, it's one of those books where Francis Roberts you can tell, sat before the Lord to get those revelations. And they're so intimate and so personal that it becomes my go-to. It is one of the things that the Holy Spirit will lead me to, and God will be so specific. Go to page 126. And it will be exactly what I need. But the only way that I can go to page 126 is because I've learned to sit in his presence and to know his voice. And I practiced knowing the voice of God. So when I would hear a thing or think a thing, rather than be like, that's me, I followed through. And over time, that became experience to know that that's really him. And I'm telling you, the Bible, yes, that's our source. But for me, Come Away, My Beloved is sacred. It's sacred. It's sacred word that Francis got straight from the throne room. And so I would encourage people to get that book. And however, you don't have to read it from page to page.
Yeah.
Just perhaps wherever, the Holy Spirit leads you, it's going to be what you need.
So Come Away, My Beloved is the old school Jesus Calling. How many of y'all got Jesus Calling?
Love me some.
Okay, so before there was Jesus Calling, there was Come Away, My Beloved. So think of the Jesus Calling book as a reference point for Come Away, My Beloved. Lori, I'm going to give this one to you. Someone said, I felt like an imposter because I didn't feel equipped. I chased degrees, certifications, all of these letters strung behind our names. How many people got them? And the student loan debt to go with it. To feel qualified. What are some practical steps as the president? You hit the C-suite, right? So what are some practical steps that this woman can use to kind of let that go and find her value in who she is and not in all of those certifications and degrees?
Yeah, I think what you just said is part of it, because I suspect that no matter how many certifications or qualifications you get, you'll still have those feelings because, I mean, I don't know your situation, but for me, I think I talked about my, years recognizing that my identity is not in what I achieve, or it could be not in the certifications I have. My work flows out of my identity, and my identity is who God made me to be in Christ. It's the fact that He calls me a daughter, that I have a relationship with Him. So I know that can seem trite, but I guess what I'm saying is maybe you're looking for that sense of validation or that sense of confidence in the wrong place. And that we instead focus on the fact that God has given us what we need. It gets back to what Rachel was saying. He's given us our skills. That's a gift. He would not leave us alone. He would not call us someplace and then leave us alone. And just, kind of bask in that truth is what occurs to me.
Awesome. I see one question up here. I'm going to give it to Rachel. How do you overcome your weaknesses when they are essential for you to be effective in your work? That's a powerful question.
It's a hard question. I don't know. I mean, I do think that we are called to lean into our strengths, and that in our weaknesses, God is strong. Now, what that looks like on a practical level, I think it's just got to rerouting in truth. I think we do have to be, as stewards, if there are things we need to shore up, we should take those steps and be responsible in that stewardship. But I also think there's freedom in trusting that God's going to work despite your weaknesses if we just step in faith through Him. Yeah.
Awesome. I see this one says, Salathia. How do you know when God is telling you to do something, such as when you moved to an apartment from your townhouse?
First of all, because that would have never been my idea. Right? And, you go through the process of, okay, so that's the enemy, for me, or is that me? And actually, at that particular time, I had been praying, honestly, about if it was time for me to move. But my plan was always, of course, to purchase another house. But really, sometimes when God is asking us to shift and it doesn't necessarily make sense, it was really about the couple that moved to my home. They needed a place.
Wow.
They were getting ready to get married. There were some situations in their life. And they were so excited. I hadn't even moved out of the house yet. It was a mess because we were packing. They had looked up my address, and I actually felt some kind of way about that, and had driven by, and the husband reached out and was like, hey, my wife saw the outside. We'd love to come, take a look at the inside. And I was like, but it's not ready yet. And they were like, no, we don't care. We just want to see it. And they came and they walked in, and the husband was like, oh, you pray up in here, right? Like, I feel the presence of God in here. And they were like, where do we sign? I was like, well, don't you want to think about it? And they were like, no. And so it was that God was meeting a need for somebody else, right? So we don't always see what's on the other side of it. And so we've got to be willing to trust that if He's asking me to shift, He's going to take care of me,
Yes.
right? And at the same time, because it's not just about us, we cannot move and we don't know how we're impacting somebody else from being blessed and having an encounter with having God answer their prayer.
Because we're many members in one body.
Yeah.
Yes.
And your yes or your no could help or hinder
Yeah.
the next person. Another way is that peace is your umpire.
Yes.
If
Yeah.
peace is your umpire, you can pretty much bet your bottom dollar. Yeah, that's God. And here's the wonderful thing. If you miss it, his grace is still sufficient.
Yep.
So you
Yes,
can't
it is.
lose.
Yeah.
You can't lose. You can't lose. Okay, Lori, advice on how to present myself when asked what I do. We should do a whole session on that. Because the season of the elevator pitch is over. Like, I don't even know how people are still talking about that. I'm a leader in my company. God got me here. So I'm excited to share, but don't want to be conceited. Ah, okay. Miss Lori, do you have any advice to speak towards that?
Well, my advice would be to say what is relevant to that conversation. So today I was introduced as president. I almost never am introduced as president professionally because what they care about is that I'm going to be the lead designer or I'm going to be what architects call the principal in charge of the project. The fact that I'm the president of my company doesn't really reflect or impact them, my clients. So I would say, if you're in a situation where the fact that you're the leader of the company is important, introduce yourself that way, and it's not conceit. I mean, I've got to say, if a man did that, nobody would think anything about it. So, be bold to do that. But if what they really want to know is what you're going to do, then describe it in that way. So tailor it to the situation.
It's called a KISS. Keep it short, stupid.
Sweet.
Keep it short and simple. Keep it short and simple, okay? Can we please give a round of applause for our amazing speakers? Thank you so much. As Roxanne is making her way, please rise if you want to get a picture of these lovely ladies. We're going to take some